Death and taxes are said to be the two things that are sure in life, but as sure as taxes are, governments across Africa are struggling to widen the tax net and enforce compliance with tax laws and regulations. Tax revenue is a vital component of government planning and spending. In the largest economy on the continent, the tax authority says compliance will only improve when payers are convinced that revenues are going to be used for the common good. The head of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mohammed Nami, stressed that the low compliance rate and tax payments in most developing countries was as a result of the failure of the social contract between the taxpayers and the government. South Africa, with a population of about 60 million people and 4 million taxpayers, generated 13 trillion naira last year, the equivalent of 13 trillion naira last year in personal income tax, as against Nigeria's 3.3 trillion naira generated as of September 2021. Joining me is Akinduyite. He's Associate Director of Tax with PwC. Ayo, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning, viewers.
So when you look at the numbers, as of October 2021, the FIRS says that it has about 41 million registered Nigerian taxpayers. So who are they? How much are they paying? And are they really paying what they should be paying? So let's start with that, Ayo.
Well, in terms of who are they, the Nigerians, of course. And of course, we expect that probably that number would have gone up slightly, but I don't have an updated number at the moment. But what cannot be challenged is the fact that possibly, people are not paying the right amount of taxes. If you compare Nigeria's economy with GDP numbers and all that, from your introductory comments relative to South Africa, we expect that the tax to GDP ratio should be much higher. It's just about 6% in Nigeria. So that's a clear indication that all the hot to pay taxes are really not contributing their share, to the cost of, providing public good, for the generality of Nigerians.
So when we look at this conversation around low tax compliance, people would wonder why the struggle is there. This should be as automated as possible, particularly for those in specific situations, those who are employed in typical businesses. Some of it is made direct as a direct debit from source. But in terms of other people, that's not how it is. So take us through why the country is struggling with tax compliance and what it really means, the impact of that low compliance on the country's economy as well.
Well, if we were to go by, recent conversation around this, the perception generally is low compliance is related to the fact that, the utilization of, tax revenue or government funding generally, is not the way it should be. But I think we probably need to take the conversation just beyond the fact that, government is not doing what it ought to do with tax revenue in terms of providing social good, for the general populace in Nigeria. In the developed world, we know that there is that reluctance even to pay taxes, despite the fact that there is improved infrastructural development. So to me, I'll take it to the fact that we probably need to improve our ability, our capability, to be able to assess all that ought to be assessed and make sure people pay. And those that do not pay, we have the robust system that is able to identify those that are not paying taxes, those that are evading taxes, and then we're able to do, the necessary things, to prevent reoccurrence and serve as deterrent even to others. So I think, in my view, that seems to be what is lacking, and that's what those that evade taxes seem to be leveraging on.
I like that you said those who evade taxes. So let's talk about this. This low compliance can come around as a failure to pay, maybe an ignorance of the process of how you pay, or even, deliberate and intentional evading of taxes. So how are people failing to or avoiding to pay their taxes to Nigeria as they duly should?
Well, and I think you put it very rightly. Some are not paying because they're probably not aware And that's not limited to Nigeria. Globally, for example, there was a study in Belgium that showed that there were significant improvements in tax compliance, by reason of improved communication and basically letting people know what they ought to do, how to go about their tax filing processes, simplifying the process and all that. And there were significant improvements in compliance. So I think that's an area where we can improve, but also in terms of enforcement, because tax is a cost, is a dent to the pocket of taxpayers. So, and typically people don't want to pay. So and the way to encourage or ensure that evasion is reduced to the barest minimum is to make examples of people, such that serves as deterrent, and that comes in the form of enforcement. And first, for you to even be able to enforce, you need to have the robust structure to be able to identify first, and then have the rule of law to ensure that people that run foul of the law, of course, as you know, tax is a matter of law. So those that run foul of the law then have to pay the consequences. And we have to make sure that those consequences are significant, they are expensive enough to then compel people, to comply.
Okay, so taking it beyond that, there's been conversation around harmonizing Nigeria's tax administration system, working through it. We've seen a number of things come about through the Finance Act that was signed by the president last year, and some of the changes are coming about. But you will still hear from people like small business owners in Nigeria about the issues of multiple taxation and the different agencies that will come to them, making income tax even a problem from those who are self-employed in Nigeria. So when we look at this issue of harmonization and tax administration, what should we be looking at in terms of reforming that system so that it can help to make it easier for those who should be paying tax to pay, and it can change the status quo, which is one of the reasons that leads to this low tax compliance?
Absolutely. Though when we talk about low tax compliance, we're really focusing on the former structured tax collecting agency, the agency of government that is empowered by law, which at the federal level is the Federal Inland Revenue Service. At the state level, it will be state inland revenue services, But if you look at it, there are all manners of levies and fees, and some of these are collected by non-state actors, So if we aggregate all these multiple taxes, so to say, or tax or payments that look like taxes, but they are not going to the taxing authorities, we'll discover that the tax to GDP may be quite high, probably closer to 10-15%. So it's really important to be able to harmonize these taxes. One is for the purpose of improving government revenue. Instead of the funds going to the pockets of individuals or non-state actors, we need to aggregate these funds all into government coffers. Then two, also in terms of the efficiency. The efficiency of collection will becomes easier if it is harmonized, and also the cost of compliance. You see market women, Okada riders, taxi drivers, people paying taxes or levies at different points. But if this is harmonized, and you have a single point accountability either at the federal level or at the state level, it becomes easier, and then you can put structures in place to prevent leakages. So clearly, I think harmonization is the way to go. We've seen that happen in the developed world, and there's really no reason why we should not be moving in that direction in Nigeria. Of course, we've discussed this severally for a couple of years, but we've not seen the right level of traction. So it requires some level of, having the right political mileage, to be able to make this happen, such that the different levels of government, at the local government, at the state government level, at the federal government level, within the framework of our constitution, are able to work together, to harmonize and simplify the tax system in Nigeria. I think that is clearly the way to go.
Ayo, you've answered my last two questions in this one answer right now. So that really has been a wrap up for it, because the idea is when we're getting these taxes and who is being taxed, we've talked about bringing in the informal sector as well. So let me ask you that last question. There are those who believe that at this point, Nigeria has taxed itself out, that we've gone to the point where we're now taxing poverty. We're unable to widen the tax nets. We're unable to even tax those in the wealthier brackets of things. How do we change that? Because if people earn a certain amount, having to pay taxes, which are both the informal levies you spoke about that don't go to the government, and even the formal ones, at the long run, they become much more of a hindrance to those people who are trying to move forward in the socioeconomic brackets. How do we address that?
No, I think, one is to address the shocks and the challenges we have as an economy. How do you tax people that are not employed? How do you tax people that are not productive? So we need to ease off and address issues around security. We need to address issues around crew theft, that is affecting the earning capacity as a country to earn forex. We need to address the ease of doing business. So such that people are employed. We need to address issues around why are refineries not working. So it's when people are working, that's when you can earn taxes from working class, from companies. Is when companies make profits. That's when you earn then you earn tax revenue. So it's very much in line with what you said around taxing poverty. When people are unemployed, businesses are struggling to survive. We are not being able to address the issues around power, infrastructure deficits everywhere. The ports are not working efficiently. Situation where it's easier to bring things, from China to Nigeria probably within 2-3 weeks, but to take them out of the port is taking months. Clearly these are structural defects, and of course, the importance of also using data. We need to know who and where people are, and then be able to assess them appropriately. So these are issues that needed to be addressed, for us to then be able to say that we can rely on the tax revenue and help to address, the fiscal deficit that we have, the humongous debt profile that we have. Clearly, managing our taxes better can help get us out of, this difficult challenge.
All right, Ayo Akinduyite, thank you so much for joining me. I like how you ended it, because it shows that it's not just about low compliance, but it is unfortunately a multi-structural and a complex issue that builds one on the other from other situations around the country. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. And as my guest ended up with, it's not just about not paying taxes, but why are Nigerians not paying taxes? Is it an ability and inability to pay these taxes? Does it involve the fact that even as they're making money, the money is not enough? There's more conversation to be had that peels away the levels and the layers around tax compliance in Nigeria. And I'm very sure in many other African countries facing the same situation. So from West Africa, we go now to Southern Africa. After the break, we're in South Africa and looking at the tourism industry's post-COVID recovery. Do stick around.